Welcome back to Currently Kent. In this episode, we're going to make good on a little bit of a tease I gave in the last episode, where we're going to put together a custom water cooling loop with the products we see here on the table. So I got a couple radiators and a water block for the graphics card, pump reservoir combo. Got a nice Corsair XC7 RGB water block here for the 1151 and the AM4 socket. A little kit there from Thermaltake for bending tubes and cleaning and cutting up the tubes as well. So this video is going to be a little less formal than the last one. There's probably going to be mostly time lapse on this build, because this is going to be quite a long process. First time doing hardline tubing or any custom water cooling at all. So we're gonna just kind of have this set up as I do the build, and so we'll talk about it here in a little bit. All right. So here's an interesting problem. Radiator in the front and the fans with the 360, making it to where I really can't figure out a decent way to get that pump res to fit in there. Like, it goes in, sort of, but it's at an angle, rubbing up right against the graphics card. So I'm gonna have to maybe, I don't know, I think I've exhausted my options. So I'm probably gonna have to go with the 360 up on the top and bring the 280 down into the front. That'll bring this back a little bit further because the radiator up here in the front is a little thicker. It's like 54 millimeter in thickness, where the one up on the top is the standard, I believe, 35 millimeters. So maybe I'll switch these two out in position, moves the pump res combo a little bit further back. So we'll see how that goes. All right, got it in there. Was able to keep the 360 up in the front. The pump res is in. 280s at the top, so playing around with the fittings a little bit here on the table, and then I'll be bending the tubes tomorrow. Hopefully everything goes according to plan. I'll be back tomorrow, just a few moments for you, and go back to work on this one. So here we are, several days later now. I've been waiting on parts to show up. A lot of the fittings that I had, wasn't really sure what I was getting into. I'm gonna go over that just for a second real quick here. These were the main source of where I basically messed up. These are 90 degree, 12 millimeter hardline 90 degree adapters. They got the black finish on them. Pretty nice. Nice looking, well built, you can tell. But the deal with these is that once you get the collar off of here, it's basically a female end on this side. So both sides have a female end, which doesn't jive too well when everything I need to put it in here has the female end on the other side. So female to female isn't gonna work for this. So I needed some male ends in there, kind of like what's in most of this already. I kind of got a little bit of work done last night, just trying to plan and get everything ready to go for today when I would get my last piece. I'll come to that here in a second, but let's see, we can get a look at the box here first. These are just kind of the standard 12 millimeter fittings right there. And they have on one end is the male end, and then the other end is where the collar is. It comes off of there. And there's a little O-ring inside of here that just, there's two O-rings actually. There's one inside on this side and one in here on the side for the collar. And that's what actually creates the seal to hopefully keep any water from leaking into all of these electronics that are in here. As we know, that's not going to be a good mixture anyhow. So on the bottom, male end right there, then basically tube will go in, collar with O-ring on this side will be on the tube already. These two will come together and be tightened down to where it's going to create a seal. So these are kind of the standard fittings. Nothing really special about these other than they're really nice quality, nice to look at, but they don't help a whole heck of a lot when you need to make a 90-degree turn. I'll get in here a little bit closer in a second and show that. So let's go with this one next. This right here is an adapter. It's a rotary Y splitter. So you can see on the rotary Y splitter we have male end here and then 1, 2 female ends there. So male and then the 2 female ends. The plan for this is to go coming out of the pump. That will be where I make a split. So coming straight out of the adapter is going to be a drain port, and then coming up is going to be, well, I'm going to have to put one of the standard fittings on top of here, bring a tube up and over to reach this spot right here where it's going to go into the GPU. And actually, I probably should switch over to a little bit of a camera angle so I can kind of show a little bit of how this run and this loop is going to work out. So it'll make more sense, I think, once I get kind of more of a vlog style, I guess, going here so you can see inside of here exactly what I'm talking about. So let me switch over to that. So this should give you a little better idea inside the case what we're looking at. Straight ahead here, we see where the CPU water block is. There's two fittings on there. One of them is the standard fitting I was talking about, which guys in this box right here. So there's one standard fitting, and it's on the left. Then on the right is a 90-degree rotary adapter. So it's basically the same as what was in here. Only difference is, as you can see, it's mounted into that water block, which means one side of it has a male end. And then on the top of the 90-degree fitting, it's a rotary fitting so it can turn as you need it. On top of that fitting is another one of the standard fittings that's on there. So that's kind of how it goes. It takes a little bit of, I did research. I definitely did research on this, but even still, had to wait for a few parts. So these water builds are quite a handful. Anyway, let's talk about the order that this is all going to go down. So I'm going to come out of that pump right there on the bottom hole. Maybe I can get a little something to point this out with. Be visible. There we go. It's not the greatest pointer, but you get the idea. It's going to come out from here with the Y adapter. So it'll come straight out from there. The Y adapter will. Basically, this orientation. It'll come out. Then there will be a drain port on that. That'll be pointing basically straight at us. That way when I want to drain the loop, I can do it easily. And then it'll go up from there. So we'll go from here, going out and up, over into this 90-degree fitting, which is inside the GPU's block. Then it's going to go straight out from there. Straight out, straight up, and to the radiator on the top. It's going to go, water's going to go through the radiator, get cooled down, or the heat's going to dissipate actually. Then there's the second part of the fitting way in the back there. So what I'm going to have to do is come out from there and hug these fans here on the way down to the CPU. And then it's going to come into the CPU here at this 90-degree fitting and come out. So then, plan is to go out from the CPU water block, kind of come toward us, then go up, and then go over all the way to this radiator here. The water is going to go through the radiator, the heat's going to dissipate. Then way in the back corner there, is going to be hard to see because the light is not quite up in there, but anyway, there's some more of the 90-degree adapters. What I was trying to do was figure out a way to get from the top of this radiator in the back to the top of the pump res combo, so that way the water could complete the loop, come back out at the bottom, and repeat the cycle and go all the way through. Difficulty there is the positioning of it. It doesn't line up with where the pump is, so it's not really just a straight down drop. That would have been quite a bit easier, and I couldn't figure out a way to get it there. So maybe if anybody knows an easy way to get it there, you can let me know. But anyway, I've used, actually this kind of came in handy, the pipe cleaner. You twist two of these together so that way they can kind of hold a shape a little bit, which as you're trying to plan a bend, it's quite helpful. It can at least hold a position for a moment so you can get a little bit of a visual on what you're trying to do. So I used that last night to figure out what I'm going to do back here is kind of go up slightly, make a little turn, and basically it's going to make an S. That's going to collide right into the top with the last part of a 90-degree fitting there. And that's the plan anyway. We're going to go back into time-lapse mode and see how we get on with this, bending the tubes and then installing them. So here we go. been 12 hours and 2 minutes that the leak test has been going on. Basically what you do is you install a little jumper onto the 24-pin cable that goes into the motherboard and gives it power. The jumper makes it to where power does not go to your motherboard, however you're still able to run the pump, which is what is circulating the liquid through the system. It's been doing it for the last 12 hours, and you'll see in here I've got paper towels kind of lining the areas where the fittings are. Got the heat gun out still. I have a little plan for that. Clean up some the backside of the computer when I go to do the cable management. Some of the issues I faced, I guess, well, first would be there's the run that comes out of the CPU block up and then over to the front-mounted radiator there. So to achieve that run, I basically needed to make a set of bends that was 2 different directions. So you can kind of see it basically going out of the CPU block from here, going up, and then over into that radiator. This one I had a devil of a time getting right, just because there's so many things that have to go correctly to get it done. It's a 3-dimensional bend. It has to come out first, then up, and then over, but you have to have the 90-degree angles being correct on basically 2 axes instead of just I guess that would be 3 axes. So instead of just going up and over, it's up, over, and over. These angles have to match here. So I went through 3 lengths of tubing to get to the one that finally works here at the end, and it turns out that that was my very last full length of tube that I had, and it was going to take a full length of tube to get the run done correctly. I'm not sure if we can get a good look at it from this camera. I'll get the camera over here off of the stand and do a little bit more of an in-depth run through what happened and how I got to where it is now. But yeah, overall that one took the majority of the time, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but yeah, luckily on that very last one I was able to focus up, pull it through. Yeah, the other difficulty was that little run that I talked about going from the out port of the radiator to the pump and reservoir combo up at the top. I just really wanted to use the inlet that's at the top because it has kind of like not really a waterfall effect, but the idea of a waterfall effect where it's coming down and into it before it goes back out. It was just such a small little adjustment that needed to be made to the tube in order to get it to the fitting at the top, and I played around with a couple different configurations and went through a pretty solid amount of the tubing here. Even tried doing something kind of where it's going to be pretty difficult to see on here. Let's see if I can get, yeah, there we go. So maybe you'll be able to see a little bit. I tried to make a straight cut down here while the tube was angling so that I could get it to line in with one of the 90-degree adapters that's in there. Wasn't happening. I tried it and got the length correct and got them kind of lined up, but I didn't feel confident that it was going to really grab on, create a seal. So went back to the original plan of making the sort of the S pattern. I tried that. Yeah, I tried that. Here we go. I tried it with kind of a smaller piece of tubing that I had that was, in my mind, it was just going to be extra and left over. So I was like, well, I'll give it a try. It didn't work out. You can see that being this size, it was going to be really tough for me to get any sort of bend going with the heat gun and then achieve another bend going the other direction with the heat gun without it playing with the first bend that got made. So actually what ended up happening was at the top here, it kind of flared out from the top because the piece was so small. After I realized that, I took one of the first failed attempts from the longest run that I have, used a section of that was left over. When I was working with a piece that was this size, it was actually quite a bit easier to put the S kind of here toward the middle and then just trim it to size from there after test fitting a few times. A lot of people that are very seasoned at this, I think they tend to use some more measurements. Actually, there's rulers they have that kind of join in together and can be manipulated in different angles, and you can measure a little more effectively that way. That's the way they do it. I've seen a handful of people that just kind of do it by eye, which is what I decided to go with trying on this one. For me, doing it by eye, it actually worked out pretty all right. I burned through quite a bit of tubing, as you can see here. It was 2 full packages of 500 millimeter tubing, so a total of 1,000 millimeters of tubing, and yeah, I ran all the way to the very end, being able to get the last run through there. So first time doing it, I'm not really too surprised. In fact, that's why I ordered extra. It was part of the suggestions from a lot of the water cooling gurus that I've been looking at their channels and how to get everything done. So the internet's just such a great place for people that want to try something like this for the first time. I mean, while I was waiting for parts to come in, I watched, you know, at least a dozen videos, different videos on how to bend, how to plan your runs, see how everybody does it, and I think going by eye for the first time was good. And then next time that I do any sort of business like this, I think being able to measure, because you know or have an idea of how bending changes the overall dimensions of the tube itself. I mean, you're taking something straight and bending it, you know, a bunch of different ways. That's going to change the overall measurements. It's not just as simple as, you know, go from here to here when it's here to here instead. So you have to make the angles to go for that. It's changing the overall size of the tube. I feel like maybe at this point doing a tutorial or any of that kind of stuff about how to bend the tubes and how all that worked. I mean, you're gonna see a little, you probably saw a little bit already from the time lapse of, you use the silicone insert, it goes in, you heat it up, you kind of use some things to line it up and get the shape. It could definitely go a little bit more in depth into that if I see a bunch of comments, you know, asking how it was done, how any of this is done. I'd be more than willing to post up some video on that. I'm gonna go ahead at this point and say after 12 hours though, the leak test has been successful. I mean, I've got all the paper towels here. They're all as dry as they were when I put them in. So I'm gonna take them out of here. I'm gonna shut everything down for a little bit and probably go top off this reservoir over here. Clean up all the cables here in the back, because believe me, there's a mess. Like I said, I'll get the camera off the stand over there just so you can get a gander at all of what's going to be going on next with these cables, because it is going to be, it's not much of a challenge. This case makes it so easy to handle cables, but there's just a lot of them, and there's a ton of RGB in here, so that adds just one more step to it. So that being said, let's get to it. All right, so let's get a look at how this run works. There's the pump res there, and coming out of the pump res, there's the splitter valve, Y valve, and then right here in front is the T valve for draining purposes. But I've got a adapter making it to where it goes up here, takes this 90 coming out of the pump, goes into the GPU's water block and runs around in there, then cools it down, comes out here, then we go up to this top radiator, out of the top radiator back here, and down into the CPU. I had to go this way because the inlet for the CPU block is on the right-hand side. So you can only go in from the right-hand side. That's why I had to make kind of the little crossover there, which ends up aesthetically making it look pretty nice. But there's a 90-degree fitting there, so that way I could get that S pattern with two 90-degree bends. Then we have this one here coming out of the CPU block. This is the one I was talking about was the most difficult, coming straight out, up, and then straight over into the reservoir. Water will go down into the reservoir, dissipate heat. It will come out back here. We have, I think, 3 90-degree fittings and then a little S pattern to go and bring us back home into the reservoir, where it goes out into the pump and carries on into a cycle again. So let's get a little bit more of like a straight on view of this so you can kind of see where everything goes. So here we are at the back of the case, and I know what you're thinking, man. It's like, look at all that. Yeah, it's a lot to deal with. There's a big old rat's nest down here. My Commander Pro didn't survive the move from the old case to this one. It's the integrity of the two-sided tape is definitely lost at this point. So, you know, quite a handful of cables for the fans with the 3 in the front, 2 in the back, 1 over there. Then of course all my cabling, custom sleeve cabling and everything needs to go back inside. Then there's 2 more controllers right here. I'm looking at potentially maybe removing these screws and putting 1 more of the controllers mounted onto here. I'm wondering if that might actually make things a little bit cleaner on the backside, easier to work with. But that's what I'll be spending the next little bit of time on, is sorting all these cables out, trying to get all the RGB software working together. So I'm gonna go do that. So as promised, here we are in the backside of the case, the business end. Looking at a lot of wires still, but it's in a little bit of better shape here. This case makes cable management really easy. I'll show you how. This panel right here comes up, and hard to do one-handed. Closes right here, and then this little door closes over here. There we go. And yeah, kind of solves that problem. So I wasn't really too worried about it. Now you know why. All right, so I'm ready to see how this thing came out. Let's go ahead and engage cinematic mode. So there you have it, it's all done. First time doing this, really nerve-wracking. I can't be any happier with how it turned out. Getting everything to basically work together without starting any sort of an electrical fire was really great. So in the next video, I'll do a little bit of benchmarking to kind of give you some idea of before and after for thermals with the CPU, the GPU, maybe how everything's set up. Go ahead and leave a comment down below if there's anything that you want me to go a little bit further into depth, as far as custom water cooling or any of the settings that I have for the pump and reservoir speed. If you wanted to see anything about the Corsair software and how you tie all those things together. There's a lot of tutorials out there, but most of the ones that I've seen have been a little bit older, so maybe you could get a 2020 version of how to breeze through IQ and set everything up for lights, fan speed. You can monitor all of your system specs from there. Everything's really great inside of it. So feel free to leave a like before you go. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.